I would like to introduce my speakers, and I will do it step by step. So in the very beginning, I would like to present my keynote speaker for today. The keynote speaker who joins us from Brussels, this is the DG Regio official, Ms. Karolina Tilman. She started her career with Olaf, and then she moved to DG Competition, and right now she is in DG Regio, dealing with issues related to smart specializations, related to SME support. So a person who is really in the very, very heart of what is going on right now in the European Commission, in the European Parliament, and the Council. And we are very, very happy to have you here, Karolina. And if you could please deliver your keynote speech and tell us a little bit more what should be expected and how should we get ready to the future perspective, whatever happens with the recovery fund, whatever happens with the Green Deal, whatever happens to all policy issues that are still open right now.
Thank you, Martin. Good morning. Welcome, everybody. My name is Karolina Tilman, and I work in the European Commission in the Directorate General for Regional Urban Policy. I'd like to say thank you to the organizers for inviting me, for having me here. I understand that this is the final event of the Smartwatch project financed by Interreg. Usually such an event would probably be an opportunity to celebrate together, but in the current conditions that is unfortunately not possible. Congratulations anyway to all the participants for the successful carrying out of the project. Today I'd like to talk indeed a bit about the future priorities for the cohesion policy and the European structural and investment funds, especially with regards to the support for innovation in framework of smart specializations. Could I please ask to highlight my slides? I don't know the second slide of my presentation. Is it on? Yes?
No.
Just to be sure that the participants can see.
Yes, right now we have the slides,
Good.
and
Okay,
Karolina,
so
officially the floor is
the
yours
first
then.
one, and let's now move to the second one, please. Thank you. For a bit of a legal framework, the cohesion policy for the next programming period, 2021-2027, is composed of several European funds, the European Regional Development Fund being one of them. The common legal basis is provided by the so-called Common Provisions Regulation, same name as the one in the current period. Neither this piece of legislation nor the regulations governing the rules of specific funds are agreed for the next programming period, because they largely depend on the compromise to be found as regards the next multi-annual financial framework, the budget of the European Union. Certain amounts of the budget of the cohesion policy were proposed by the Commission back in 2018, and they are reflected here on the slide. Now, with the economic landscape largely influenced by the COVID-19 outbreak, these amounts are likely to be changed, at least as soon proposed by the European Commission. And the overall envelope for the cohesion policy will increase, at least as proposed by the Commission, by 55 billion euro. Could we move on to the next slide, please? Thank you. Concerning the ERDF, the main objectives of the future intervention as proposed by the Commission are the following: smarter, greener, more connected and more social Europe, as well as Europe closer to the citizens. The administrative capacity building and strengthened cooperation between regions in all of its forms are also high on the agenda. The Smarter Europe objective, supporting research and innovation, is of special importance, taking into account its role in supporting the knowledge-based growth. and also the transition to the greener and then more digital economy. Depending on the level of development of the region, between 35 and 45% of all ERDF spending will be channeled into this objective. So it's also a very important one, even more important one, in the context of the COVID-19 outbreak. So let's please move to the next slide. Thank you. Europe needs to invest in innovation and research to remain competitive on the global scene. I think there's no doubt about that, we all agree. However, the innovation performance across Europe is not homogeneous, but rather highly divergent. And there are different needs in terms of investments in the innovation leaders regions and in the regions with modest innovation performance. And it's here that the smart specialization strategies come into play, defining the potential of a given region and the identifying the cascade of investment needs. And in terms of ERDF, a particular challenge lies now and will lie ahead the net beneficiaries of cohesion policy. Because with the huge amounts for the investments in research and innovation, they really need to make sure that the project pipeline is there and the critical mass of innovative projects ready to absorb these amounts is prepared in advance. Let's move to the next slide, please. The big objective of Smarter Europe for cohesion policy, ERDF, is broken down in the proposal into so-called specific objectives, defining the priorities and ambitions in this area. The ERDF shall support the objective of Smarter Europe by promoting innovative and smart economic transformation, by, in particular, enhancing research innovation capacities and uptake of advanced technologies, reaping the benefits of digitization for citizens, companies, and governments, enhancing growth and competitiveness of SMEs, and developing skills for smart specialization, industrial transition, and entrepreneurship. The common backbone for all these investments, all these areas of investment, are the smart specialization strategies. Let's go further, please. And the types of investments under each specific objective are, of course, subject to negotiations between the European Commission and the given member state or region, depend on the level of administration of the given operational program. But the thinking behind is, however, in particular to stimulate the technology transfer, so that the excellent research results do not stay in the scientific world, but are translated into products that go into the market. It's also the transition towards greener and more digital economy. The types of investments for the second specific objective is really to stimulate the ICT uptake, as Europe's falling behind the world statistics in many of the criteria of digitization. Then really the strengthening of SMEs is extremely important, especially in the context of the COVID outbreak. And here, the access to advanced business services, something you were working on, I understand. The framework of this project will also be supported following the analysis of needs, of course, for the given regions, analysis of market failures. A new specific objective of skills, this is something innovative and novel for ERDF, will be supported. Why? Because for many of the SMEs in Europe, it's not anymore that much access to finance, for example, even if, of course, the recent crisis changed that factor. But in more general and more medium long term, it's the access to skills, to competent workforce. It's also under this element, you'll be able to finance the innovation management in SMEs. The problem we have very often, what we hear, is that let's say the base number, the basis of innovative, the number of innovative companies, the companies that innovate, is fixed. It doesn't really move upwards very strongly. Here, you'll be able to invest in let's say the training programs for SMEs, that they learn how to introduce innovations. The elements of reskilling will be very important as well, and the elements, again, how to make the scientific world cooperate closely with the business world. Sometimes also this human factor is very important, and the understanding of for both sides what the other one is doing. That's why the investments in the skills of the scientists and the employees of universities into how to translate the scientific work into scientific works into commercial products will be very strongly supported. Can we please move to the next slide? Well, as I mentioned, the smart specialization strategies are the backbone of the investments in the area of smarter Europe, and they are also prerequisites to tap into the ERDF financing. The enabling conditions in cohesion policy are one of the tools the EU can use to introduce and force horizontal principle. And its role is to ensure that the proper environment conducive for the fund's investments is in place. And these conditions have to be fulfilled right at the start of the programming period and remain so throughout it. And they are, of course, established for all of the sectors of intervention of the cohesion policy. But in what as regards the policy objective 1, research, innovation, it's of course the smart specialization strategies enabling condition that's in place. And of course, we've built a certain knowledge and experience from preparing and implementing those strategies across the EU over the last years. We learned a lot about the interplay between the innovation actors, challenges of cooperation and difficulties with building and maintaining an active process throughout the period of time, that's the process that brings tangible results. And for the future, the key issues are not necessarily the prioritization as such, but more governance and analysis and capacity related issues. And so here one would need to ask oneself a question on the improved innovation diffusion, on the need for reforms to remove bottlenecks for technology transfer, for example. On cooperation, is the level of cooperation sufficient? Really our potential is used here. On the industrial change, the response, or at least the thinking of preparedness to the industrial transition, and the question on monitoring and evaluation that later on feeds into the policy development. Let's go further. So just quickly to say here that it won't be any more than one of exercises in the current period, but an ongoing assessment. That's maybe a technical issue on one hand. On the other hand, it's pretty important in terms of keeping an active entrepreneurial discovery process, keeping it active throughout the years. Let's go further. Here you've got the details on what the European Commission will be looking at while assessing those enabling conditions, those strategies. So as I said, it won't be the prioritization anymore, and even an update of the strategy as such is not required if it's still the strategy, the sectors, the niches still, according to you, respond to the economic landscape, or mirror the economic landscape rightly. But we'll be looking at actually if the thinking is there, if the analysis have been undertaken to identify the bottlenecks to innovation diffusion. Again, the technology transfer issue. Why is the knowledge kept within the scientific institutes? Is it really sufficiently and to its full potential transferred onto the market? Then we'll be looking at the governance issues. So where is the specialization anchored? Who has the formal mandate and decisional powers over the specialization? Certain of its elements. Next slide, please. We'll be looking at monitoring evaluation tools and the element of learning of what can be fed out of the data gathered into the further policy development and development of the strategies, of course. Because, of course, master strategies are, we know very well, supposed to be a living process and not set in stone once and for all. The next criterion is the entrepreneurial discovery process and active functioning that I have covered before a little bit. Really, the right representation is very important here. And next slide, please. Okay, I think I've gone fast over this point 3 and 4. I don't know if you've seen that on time on the screen when I was speaking, but this is covered. And let's go, please, to yet another slide. We'll be looking at the actions necessary to improve national regional research and innovation systems. This is a bit particular. Each year, the Commission issues a so-called country report and country-specific recommendations for each member state. And we'll be looking at how the country-specific recommendations relating to research and innovation, if applicable, for the given member state, are taken up and addressed by this member state. So this will be subject of analysis up to this point. And point 6, actions to support industrial transition. This is something I've mentioned before. It's like if looking at how the potential risks, but also opportunities by all the changing factors in the world are taking up on the regional level, really. So are the risks and opportunities linked to globalization, automation, the green transition, the digital transition, rightly analyzed, identified at least on the regional level, and ideally acted upon. Let's go to one of my last slides, please. The point 7, measures national collaboration. This is the last criterion we'll be looking at while assessing the smart specialization strategies enabling condition for the next programming period. And this is something you are very well experienced in and know well how to collaborate on the international between regions in the area of smart specializations. And this is exactly what we'll be looking at. Does the given region, given member state, identify the opportunities for international collaboration adequately and sufficiently? And this means not only cooperation of administrations, it's about all the innovation actors cooperating together, the universities, research technology organization, SME, clusters, and this is in view, of course, of networking, but also ultimately developing European value chains. And this brings me to my next slide, which is, thank you, on the component 5, interregional innovation investment, something you've heard about, I presume, 1 month ago in detail from a colleague of mine. But again, this is a new instrument proposed in the area of the cohesion policy, exactly to further stimulate international, interregional cooperation in the areas of smart specialization with a view to prepare and develop and then implement the European value chain and cooperation in this area. You are, of course, warmly invited to take advantage of the instrument while it's up and trying in the, let's hope, close future. Well, thank you. I'm ready to take questions, if any, and I wish you further fruitful discussions throughout the early afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, Karolina stays online, and we are back to Zabrze, to our studio. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, please feel free to ask questions. Yeah, we still have something like 15 minutes to ask questions to Karolina. And before your questions arrive, I'm sorry for being quite straightforward, but I would like to ask one very pragmatic question, Karolina. When can we expect money?
Well, it is a cascade of events that needs to happen. And from the agreements on the highest political levels that needs to take place to the agreements on more regional levels that also needs to happen. So first, MFF, multi-annual financial framework, the proposal of the Commission, the new proposal of the Commission, taking into account the recent events that we have all experienced very strongly, is on the table.
Indeed.
But the agreement needs to be there. On this basis, we'll be able to agree, but still it's of course not us here today in the studio or in front of our screens, but again, I'm talking about the political agreements in the Council, in the European Parliament, and I'm talking about the agreements on the regulations, on the text of the Common Provisions Regulation, of the ERDF regulation, and so on and so forth. On that basis, then the member states, the regions, negotiate the operational programs with the European Commission, with DG Regio representatives, for the partnership agreement, the operational programs. When that is approved, you know the process probably as better than I. As beneficiaries, we need to have a certain list of measures in the given operational programs, certain selection criteria that are to be approved by the monitoring committees that are to be set up for each and every operational program.
To be
Once we have the selection criteria, we are ready to, well, you are ready, the managing authorities are ready to publish calls, and the future potential beneficiaries can tap into the funding. Well,
okay, so
submit good projects.
Colleagues, please warm up then. Yeah, it's a long procedure, we all know, and it will surely take some time. But let's hope it's all completed in the very successful way. I mean, successful for us. Good. There is a question emerging. How much attention would be put to particular areas? Will be defined some priority areas, for example, telehealth. So will there be any special focus on the thematic scope?
Well, then it's again up to the content of the operational programs and how the managing authorities want to address the issue of selection criteria. Very often, for particular calls, there is the if a certain sector is in the smart specialization area for the given region, then it gets additional points, or even there are investments that absolutely have to be in line with the smart specialization sectors. Like in the current programming period, we have the thematic objective 1, research innovation, obligatorily. Only investments in smart specialization areas are supported. For the future period, this is still being discussed. Definitely, specific objective 1, specific objective 4 will support only investments in smart specialization areas. For specific calls on more targeted sectors, niches, economic areas, this is more for this element of negotiations of the operational programs and bilateral discussions between the managing authorities and the European Commission.
You mentioned niches at least twice or even 3 times, and also you said that you focus very much on capacity building. So my question in addition would be, do you think that in this programming period there is a stronger focus on entrepreneurial discovery, on really bringing up the emerging technologies, than to focusing on this strong smart specializations that are easily visible in statistics or as a potential of the regions, for example?
I think it's already the case in the current programming period, because as I said during can you hear me? Yeah, okay. During my presentation, the whole idea is to have an active, living, interactive process, absolutely not locked in, with possibility to react to the developments that are happening in the world. So absolutely, everything that's becoming a priority, that there's a consensus between the innovation actors in the region that we need to address a new area, and there are plenty of them because the challenges are changing. That's absolutely in line with our thinking.
There was also a question about alignment of thematic objective or objective 1 and 5, because the person who asked the question said that plenty of activities related to smart and interregional cooperation or trans-regional cooperation was included in 1, and right now it can be also in 5. Is then any technical hint? Are there any technical hints concerning the alignment between these 2 objectives of future policy?
I can reply the question focusing on the international interregional innovation investments, because indeed there was a big discussion where to place it in the regulatory framework. And before, in the first phase of negotiations, it was rather in the future Interreg regulation. And in the recent legislative developments, it's apparently put in the ERDF. But then again, PO1, Future Policy Objective 1, focuses on the smart specialization strategy, smart specialization areas, and this will be the main areas of interest for the investments in research and innovation.
Okay, we have already discussed timeline, we have already discussed thematic scope, we have already discussed alignment, and another very difficult technical question coming, maybe technical, not difficult, question coming from our viewers. And this is a question about the TRL, so technology readiness levels, because the question says, research including fundamental TRL, low TRL, was not so really prioritized. Do you expect that the low TRL level projects will be financed in the new perspective?
You have heard in my presentation that the focus on the close to the market research is still there, and it's quite visible. In practical terms, we are kind of basing ourselves on the RD&I framework for state aid. Because of course, all these investments, ERDF investments, have to be in line with the state aid regulations. And there we are looking at the scale of industrial research and experimental development definitions. That these are the investments under Article 25 of the GBER. And they correspond to TRLs, if I recall, industrial research is TRL 2 and up to 4, and in experimental development 5 and more. And again, let's negotiate, and this is subject to bilateral discussions within the operational programs. But overall, as ERDF, we focus on growth, knowledge-based growth, and on the research that's close to the market.
I will stick to what you said. Let's negotiate and ask the final question for this part of the session. The question is, who is going to assess that the region or the member state is enabling condition of the good governance of S3? Are you the person to assess it, or who is the person? Or the body, of course.
Thank you. Well, it's DG Regio. It's not me personally, but my wonderful colleagues.
Okay, so DG Regio is the one to be responsible for this assessment, yes? Do I get it right?
Specialization and condition, yes, indeed.
Okay. So, yeah, we can have the final question. It's coming. It's emerging on my screen, so sorry. Shift of funds from Interreg to other programs. How and if will it affect all Interreg programs? So will interregional cooperation be affected? In terms of budget, of course.
I don't really get it. Sorry for the...
I think that the question is about, do you expect that the money for Interreg will be smaller than used to be in the past?
You had the slide with the amounts as proposed by the Commission in 2018. For ERDF, we had 216 million for the ERDF, including 8.4 billion for Interreg. Now, with what was proposed yesterday by the President von der Leyen, with the increase for the overall cohesion policy, the increase of the envelope by 55 billion euro, I can't really tell you how the breakdown of this additional amount among the funds will look like. This, I don't have this information yet, so please follow up on that later, maybe with our colleagues from the Interreg unit in the region.
Okay, so the key message is, let's warm up. Let's negotiate, let's get ready with our programs on the policy side and with our project ideas on the beneficiary levels. We don't really know about the future and about the money and about the timeline, but let's hope it's gonna end in a very positive way. Karolina Tilman was our keynote speaker for today. Thank you very much, Karolina, for this message from Brussels. We do hope we can stay in touch in case anybody of our viewers would like to know further information. So probably you can Google out the body, the unit where Karolina works, and get some very relevant information back. Thank you, Karolina, very much.
Thank you, Martin, and thank to the participants for your patience and listening to our presentation.
Okay, it was nice having you here.